Hello everybody, and welcome to 5 mindset traits that will help propel your career in software engineering. Let's get started. What is a mindset? So you can think of a mindset as a thinking pattern or a frame of mind, and it essentially governs how you make sense of the world. It's basically your ideas and how you interpret other people and yourself. Now, why should we care about this? Why should we care about our ideas or about our mindset when essentially we're, software engineers, developers, programmers? It's actually very easy. We're going to take a step back and analyze the foundation of our thinking system. We will attempt to, quote, program, end quote, ourselves and adapt to our environment in a certain way. And we will actually glimpse at a new window of potential. Trait number 1, care for your craft and be consistent. So this can get slightly philosophical. I'll try not to go there, at least not too deep. I'll borrow a Japanese cultural aspect known as Kaizen. So Kaizen talks about gradual self-improvement. For example, working consistently for a couple or more hours every day to sharpen your skills. And in most cases, you're practicing a creative profession where you're figuring out a solution to a specific problem that has a direct impact on a business. So that means your creations are as effective as the sharpness of your skills, and your experiences allow you to, distinguish and assess. So on that topic, you want to remain on the edge of your field. What I mean is you want to be up to date as much as possible, because technological progress is very fast, and in order to be better at decision making and to steer away from reinventing the wheel, as they say, it's essential. It's essential for those two reasons. How do we go about doing that? Well, point number 1, put your skills in practice by finding an open source project to contribute to. That's a good starter. You're going to collect a lot of experience doing that, and you will, put your skills to the test. Or you can start your own hobby project. You could take the opportunity to experiment with a new library or a framework you've always wanted to try. You can participate in conferences and meetups about your field in tech. That's always a good place to learn more things. Alternatively, you can help communities such as the one from Stack Overflow, or share your experiences by publishing articles. Also, you can make use of the, quote, good side, end quote, of social media. Social media do get a lot of criticism, but you can actually, for example, use Twitter and follow tech topics or influencers and stay up to date with topics that interest you the most. And last but not least, I know it's a surprise to most, you should read research papers. If you're trying to solve the unique problems of your industry, then some of the research in those problem spaces may help you overcome them. So when we talk about keeping up to date, we talk about innovation, we want to be on the edge. We want to get our knowledge from valid sources, and it should be as cutting edge as possible. And closing this trait, just a reminder, you need to be consistent with honing your skills and learning habits. So take the time and block your calendar where appropriate. This is key to gradually developing little by little on the daily. Okay, now for the second trait, be a great team player and try to act as a catalyst. I think here that's pretty self-explanatory. We do work in teams most of the time, whether you're part of a bigger company and you're working in a team of front-end developers or back-end developers, or perhaps a member of a smaller company and you're working with cross-functional teams. It's really not a cliche when they say, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. A quality that can make you stand out is to not only be a great team player yourself, but to bring your teammates together as well. You can unite them under a common goal and enable them to do their best. So how do we go about achieving that? Well, the first thing is you should always assume good intentions. What do I mean by that? This is basically a good guide to avoid misunderstandings. You shouldn't assume that people want to criticize you or even disrespect you. In a professional setting, this is the best first thing to do. Assume that their intentions are good. Now, you can make sure all opinions are heard and respected. And you should always engage in productive dialogues. This is essentially a follow-up from the first point, where if things one way or another escalate, you should seek to de-escalate as fast as possible and when necessary. Now, we talked about being a catalyst. Essentially, you should enable people's strengths and supplement their weaknesses. Everybody is good at something, and for good or for bad, we all have weak spots. Nobody's perfect. We therefore want to emphasize on what we do best and let others help us on what we don't do so well. And do not hesitate to ask for help. You know, some people like to do things themselves. They don't like to bother others, but that actually can work against them most of the time. Another thing is you should learn how to delegate. As I just said, like, people like to do things themselves. Perhaps they don't want to bother others with their problems, or they think they can do them better when that's really not the case. And if you don't have much time, then you should really ask others to help you. Last but not least, give feedback. I mean, people learn from others, and it's always valuable if you can provide constructive feedback to others. But you should also learn to receive feedback yourself. And I don't only mean code reviews. I mean feedback about your communication, about how you work together, about almost everything. Okay, moving on. Trait number 3. Underpromise and overdeliver, not vice versa. I'm very sure the most experienced of you have heard this phrase before. We should always try to communicate our commitment to tasks and how long they're going to take with a little bit of extra time, a little bit of buffer time. And we should try and finish the task earlier than we promised. But the challenging part is actually making a good guesstimate. And I'm throwing this word here, guesstimate, but what I really mean, it's an educated guess. You have experience, you know how complex something is, whether you're depending on other colleagues who have their own timelines, they have their own commitments, and you need to come up with a roadmap. You basically have to guess how long will you need to deliver something functional. Now, it is a scary topic for most of us. I mean, truth be told, no matter how senior you are, it's quite scary. In some cases, we avoid giving a concrete number for the hours or days we will spend on a task altogether, and we resort to using Fibonacci numbers or t-shirt sizes or other adjectives. So, whether you give a concrete date or a t-shirt size, we have a rough expectation on when something is done. And on that topic, you should remember that delivering good enough software earlier rather than later is much preferable than delivering something almost perfect much later beyond the market's timing opportunity. I mean, users would rather have something much earlier to get some value out of rather than wait. And in the meantime, maybe there's somebody else, another company maybe jumping in and taking that opportunity. So, how do we do that? Well, the first thing is we need to define what we mean by saying done. When is something done? Is it when it's somewhat working in a development environment, or even worse on your machine? Perhaps there's a few cases that are covered, what we call the happy path. Is it done, or do we actually need to cover a few edge cases? In the end, we're asking ourselves, how does a deliverable qualify as finished? On that topic, we need to clarify the requirements of our tasks. What exactly do we need to do? And we need to clarify the blockers and the team availability if we're working in a team setting. And this is very tricky because everybody has their own roadmaps, their own timelines, their own commitments, and you need to somehow bring everybody on the same page and try to commit to produce a synergistic result. Now, regarding perfection that we talked about earlier, we need to talk openly about that. I mean, quality and optimization, these things can they can take forever. And based on my experience, these two are really the reasons why software engineers, developers, they fail to meet roadmap commitments. Some even view them as features, which is not an outrageous idea. I mean, from a purely mathematical perspective, optimization can go on forever. You need to know the scope and the extent of the quality and to be aware of the trade-offs. In most cases, users would rather have some good enough software, as I said before, rather than wait for the perfect product or the almost perfect product much longer. Now, the next trait on the list: stay curious and open-minded. I'm aware that the way this trait is formulated, it can mean everything and nothing. Perhaps we can try and think of a specific example. Imagine you've been working on your field for a decade or more already, and a colleague of yours, perhaps junior in seniority compared to you, approaches you with a radical idea. You're a busy person and you might dismiss it right from the get-go, knowing it's probably something new that hasn't been tested or tried much yet. Sometimes solutions come where we least expect them from. Because of this, we can look into the following 2 points as a guide. First, we should be explorative and remain thirsty for knowledge. I would like to borrow a phrase from a Greek philosopher, Socrates. He said, "I know that I know nothing." And this means basically that technological progress moves so fast that when you start scratching the surface and you realize how deep the rabbit hole goes, how much it branches out, you'll be humbled. You'll realize you know only 0.001% of everything there is to it. And that percentage, as time passes, it grows smaller. Now, what is unconventional today could become conventional tomorrow. And that's why you need to keep your mind open to new ideas. Well, I know this is difficult to manage sometimes. Inevitably, you will encounter many situations where you have to let go of any fixed mental structures, ideas, or concepts you're very familiar with, and you just need to take a fresh look and assess things. Next, last but not least, get in the habit of networking. Connecting with people, especially ones in your field, can be a determining factor in your professional evolution. And I cannot really stress this enough, networking is a direct contributor to your career prospects and your social well-being. It constitutes the bedrock of some of the traits we talked about earlier and enables you to get to know yourself better, because we get to know ourselves through others after all. Now, a few pointers I'd like to raise here. Number one is, do not settle for contacts only inside your own team. Try and grow your professional network outside of it as well. Next, you can put yourself in places where there's lots of other professionals like you, such as conferences, talks, meetups, etc. I mean, if you're actively pursuing places where other people are, perhaps smarter people than you, that's where you're going to learn and connect with others. And it's a great opportunity to change your environment as well, which is helping your social well-being. And the third point is, you can actually leverage social media and professional networking sites such as LinkedIn to connect with others who have the same interests as you. And in the end, you can actually be a helping hand to others. You can put your skills in practice and make a good impression. Similarly, others can be of service to you when you need them. You can explore your shared interests and even land a new opportunity that appeared through your network. Okay, and with that, we conclude the video, 5 mindset traits that, in my opinion, will help take your career as a professional to the next level. Remember though, there's no one size fits all. In other words, we cannot effectively, quote, program ourselves, end quote, just like we do with our software, so that we behave perfectly in every situation. Therefore, applying your learnings from here is circumstantial, and there's a negative side to most of them as well. 2 examples as a closing takeaway. Basically, when you care too much for your craft, that could turn you into a perfectionist, and that can essentially compromise your roadmap estimates and mess with the sense of fulfillment you can get when you create and build. On the other hand, giving feedback to a colleague of yours at an inappropriate time, when they are, for example, emotionally charged, could trigger an adverse reaction that's really hard to de-escalate. So you should try and meet them when they are, in a more appropriate time. or when you're over communicating project requirements, goals, and deadlines, that can actually saturate any project timeline because you're spending most of the time in meetings. And that will definitely confuse stakeholders, especially when there's too many technical details. That's it. So be curious, stay vigilant, and get out there. If you enjoyed this video, thumbs up, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so that you are up to date whenever I release a new video. Thank you for watching.